Welcome back to the painting. You should have your MahaMritunjaya drawing. I did a lot of erasing in the end on mine, so you will maybe see some harsh lines. Today we're going to start with the gold. So we often start at the top with the outer line, which is going to be gold. So let's see how we do the gold. Got my mixing tray. I like to use gouache, and this is Winsor & Newton gouache. Hello, Winsor & Newton. And we're going to add a little gold and a little water. So hold my palette still with one hand. Put a little pressure with the brush. Special mixing brush is always a good idea. So we're going to do the gold outline. The container for the MahaMritunjaya Yantra. And before we do anything, we are in fact going to do our mantra. Every yantra has a mantra. So this is going to be the MahaMritunjaya mantra while I pick out a good brush. That looks pretty good. Don't be too shy. Don't feel like you have to use the thinnest brush in the world. Sometimes as long as you get a good point, you can use actually a little bit of a bigger one. So I'm going to try these two and see which ones work. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sukandem Pushtivardhanam Urvarugamiva Bandhanam Mritur Mukshya Mamritata. And now that we've done our mantra, we can begin the painting. Thin brush. Let's see what I'm going to end up using. I'll start with the small one. So taking a little paint, I'm going to blot it either on the side of my big palette or on a little piece of paper. And I'll have an extra piece of paper under my hand. Triambakam. I usually find I do more chanting with the painting than the drawing. So somehow seems more meditative part of the process. If it's a bit scratchy, just add a little bit more water. And if it's too transparent, you might have to add a little more paint. I think the biggest tip is just going to be don't press too hard with your paintbrush. The weight should be in this hand and not so much in the paintbrush. You're also welcome, if painting isn't your thing, to find some markers. And you can use these colors, and this would be a nice gold marker moment. And now that you're on your way, I'll probably shift to time-lapsing this video. I just wanted to show you how I began. I'll do this with each color. We'll mix it together, so you can always fast forward onto the next moment where you see the palette. All right, that's it. I'm gonna start going a little bit faster with the filming. Just keep in mind that you're invoking the Shiva energy the energy of the unknown, the energy of the space needed to heal. Oftentimes, some period of dis-ease or even just healing is needed because we haven't given ourselves enough space. It's the only time people who never take a day off work, they're not going to do it unless they're sick, for example. So how about you just find some nice ways to give yourself a little more time. Then you won't need to actually get sick in order to take time. Hi, here we are. We're going to mix the yellow now. So when you have gold, the next color is yellow. And for this very sattvic yantra, it's going to be a, let's see, my mixing brush went here. It's going to be more of a light yellow. So that means it's going to be a little bit of lemon, a little bit of primary probably. This is the lemon. There's actually very minimal colors in this yantra. Yellow, white, blue, and silver. It's really just different ways to carry that blue to us. Because blue is really the healing color. So that was a little lemon, a little primary yellow, just to give it a little bit of depth. And I'll add a little bit of white. Not too much. Get a piece of paper ready. Try out the color. You don't want it too acidic. The white makes it opaque. Also just reduces the slight sharpness of the yellow. So this is looking pretty good. See how that's a little bit softer now. And then we're ready to begin. Sometimes before this second color, I might do a little bit of erasing. Let's have a look. Yellow is pretty transparent, so you don't want to have pencil marks underneath. Let's take a look. It's not too bad. Maybe I'll just erase a tiny bit in the corners. Have a few marks that I didn't end up needing when we drew the gates. It all depends what the color is that I'm going to put down, if I'm going to do this extra erasing or not. If it's dark or gold, it'll cover really well. I won't need to do this. But white, yellow, any of the lighter shades, probably do a little erasing. Because once that yellow paint is down, you can't really go back in and erase. All right, the odd mark doesn't matter. Now the gold is nicely dry. I waited a moment while I was mixing, washing up. And then we'll start with the yellow. That last brush worked really well, so I'm going to stick with it. It was actually the smaller brush. Whenever I go shopping to a bigger town, because we live in a small town that doesn't have an art store, I always go to the shops that have the art supplies and the brushes and try to buy my brushes in person. They're all different sizes, 0, 0, 0. What's this one? 0. 0, 0, 0 is the smallest. But it's all about the point. And you just can't tell that when you order online if you're going to end up with a brush with a good point or not. So I'd rather buy the brushes in person if I can. Things like Winsor & Newton paints, obviously I can order online. And brushes really only last so long and keep that point so long. That's why I always use a different brush for mixing, because I don't want to ruin these points. Having a good brush and a good point really can make all the difference. So just thought I'd make that point today. No pun intended. All right, so I'm gonna slowly go around. I'm going clockwise. It's a nice color to prepare for the next color. It's very illuminating to have this gold and yellow. This is the wisdom coming into the yantra, the wisdom and opulence, the energy of the guru. So that blue is an interesting blue. It's a little bit of a cross between cerulean blue and Prussian blue. And let's see how that blue wants to come out today. It is a little bit of an interesting blue, right? Greeny blue. Whenever you get a color that has two names in it, like that's greeny blue, then you wonder, is it going to be more green or blue today? Actually, it is made with two blues, so let's see. Typically Prussian, cerulean. But we'll try. Sometimes you end up adding another color. I would say it's mostly cerulean blue. And even taking a breath while you're mixing paints can help soften into the intuitive faculties. Get the good color, get the color you need. Maybe I'll put that there, it's a little darker. So that's the Prussian. Prussian blue is really dark, almost looks like black in some lights, but also a little greeny. And cerulean blue is a little turquoisey. So there are your greeny qualities. And then I'm going to actually keep that white for the petals. So I am going to bring a little more white into the scene here. Get my mixing brush. Maybe not all of it, Get some hairs out. Okay, now we're ready. So let's try make friends with the cerulean. I always think these colors are a little bit aquatic. They're sort of like a little earthy and a little aquatic. Because I do feel very calm. It's not like a watery, unsettled feeling. It's very calm, grounding feeling when I look at this yantra. Okay, so that's just when it's plain cerulean. And then we'll add a little of the Prussian. Let's see, so there's this one. I'm always going to be trying. How does it look? How does it look? Okay, so I think I've got enough white for sure now. If there's too much white, you actually have to add a little bit more water. Now I'm going to put it on the paper, wait for it to dry, because oftentimes the color will appear a little bit darker when it dries. So let's have a look at that color. The one I just put on looks a little bit like a cross between this one and this one. And just like with every yantra, you know, it's hard to see the color until you end up with the whole yantra and you can compare the colors one next to the next, next to the next, one next to it. But that's a pretty good blue. Like I said, every time it feels like it comes out a little bit different. So don't worry too much if it's not exactly the same color. It's my first one on my second one. Today it looks quite different again, see? If we compare the two. And like I said, I've made a few. And I feel like the color I've just made looks a little more like the first one I made. I like it. I'm going with it. It gives me a good feeling. And I'm going to start the painting. I think I'll start in a corner, this part. And I'll use a little bit of a bigger brush. Maybe a brush with the, let's see here. Okay, I'll use the, what does this say? Just so you know, a 3. All the 3s vary a lot too. So I've got my healing blue. I would say it's a slightly greeny blue, but it's got this feeling of weight in it. MahaMritunjaya Yantra. Now you know the mantra. And now we're going around, and there is no petal band, outer band. So we'll go up to the petals. And when I have a straight line like this, I'll probably start a little bit away from the line. Here it looks like I need to add a little bit of water. When you see those scratchy brush marks, it means you don't have enough water. And then I'll slowly go up to the line. And again, looks like I have to add a little more water. Let's see how this is. Yeah, I go up to the line a little bit gingerly because you don't want to go over the line. Also, you kind of practice the direction of the stroke. You can also practice on a spare piece of paper. That would be an idea. To be really happy with the consistency of your paint. I'm kind of feeling like this does really need more water. And always turn the paper so you have the best light. So the petals are going to be white. I've made these before where I've just put a hint of blue in. But to be honest with you, there's going to have been some blue probably on my mixing brush. And I think the purity of white is really meant to be just the thought of the bluey white. So I just brought this white back to life. And I'm excited to show you what we're going to do, where we're going to put it. Here's the Yantra. I'm going to do a little bit of erasing. Just make sure this part isn't too dark. There's so many nice colors in this Yantra. These silvers, and after we do the white, I'll show you how we're going to mix 2 shades of silver. One is going to be a metallic blue, so silver with the addition of this background color. So just lighten those up just a tiny bit. And now we're free of them. And then to start painting, let's see what brush we're going to use. We're going to use the large brush again. So if we use this brush for the blue area, come back. I'm just going to show you that color. Make sure I just have a sample of it. We might have to see a little bit later how the silver looks next to it. It's nice to have a piece of paper next to you. Try out the colors, and then you can experiment a little bit so you know what you're doing once you head on to the Yantra itself. And I'll take a breath and settle in for this period of painting with my Try and Become mantra. So if your paper is already white, you won't feel like you're doing that much. But later on, when you step back, it will have a certain finish that it wouldn't have had if you've just left the paper. So I encourage you to paint, unless you're looking for a little bit of a rootsy yantra, in which case you're welcome to leave the paper neutral. If you do find you have something dark underneath that you want to cover, it might not cover it all in one go. So you could come back after doing all 8 petals and just double check. Is there any section of a petal that you didn't cover properly? Maybe the pencil marks were too dark underneath. Or maybe some of the blue paint is there. I might have a little bit of that here, look. So I'll come back around and probably just do that edge. And it's nice to really work at the point of the petals. One way to do that is to kind of flatten out the brush and then go in very gently. Hardly any weight on the brush. So there's a nice border on the white petals, and there's two colors we're going to mix now. So here's the silver. And then we have a bluey silver. So we have silver and we have a bluey silver. There's a lot of silver, which is beautiful. If you think about Shiva, Shiva's worshipped on Monday. Silver's a very moon color. So I'll show you how to make these two colors. First of all, we'll mix the plain silver. It's just water. So we have silver and then bluey silver. And this bluey silver, we're going to put in the petal centers. We're also going to use it behind the next row of petals. So that's the first silver. And then clean my brush before I dip into the original blue mixture. I might have been a little zealous. Let's see. Definitely blue, definitely not silver. So can you see those two colors? So that's what we have to work with now. And the silver, the bluey silver is going to be the color we use on the insides of the petals. And then we're going to do a border with the silver. So we're going to shimmer it up a bit. Shimmer up the outer edges of the petals. So just rinse that out. And then I'm going to use a very thin brush with this one. It's not so much small as thin. Let's take a look. Well, it's not so much short, I guess. See this one. Once I get it wet, so this is 0.20. So what does that mean? A 20th of 0? So this is for my silver. I'm actually going to start with the outlines. So the outline, I'll show you one. The outline is going to be on the white. It's one of those, doesn't feel like you're doing much moments, but it just helps add a little definition. Not to mention a little sparkle. So I guess the line is slightly in the blue, slightly in the white. Most of you have such a nice shape with your white. I don't want you to lose that. So you definitely don't want this to be clunky. No clunky silver allowed. It's just a really delicate little shimmer you're adding to your petals. And if you're not sure, try a little on a piece of paper. Don't just plonk your brush onto your yantra. There are ways of correcting things, but it's just always so much easier if you can get it right the first time. And just as before, if you feel like there's something at the end that just looks a little less than smooth, you can go back in. And then we're going to do a little outline on this center shape. It's quite subtle. It's nice to have a good point on this shape. And then you're going to switch and go into the, you can see that, I'm going into the bluey silver now. And I'm going to make a bluey silver triangle. Kind of a triangle. So I really don't want to have too much paint on my brush. All right, so now we're gonna go around, silver outlines, a mini silver background to that triangle, and then a blue triangle. Now I'm going to prepare the colors for the next 3 bits. So let's just show you what they're going to be. There's going to be there's going to be 3 gold rings. Can you see that? It's 1, 2, 3, and then in between is silver. So they're not the easiest to see, but there they are. So 3 gold rings with silver. And then behind the petals, we're going to use that color. So that color is the bluey silver mixture, our lunar mixture for Shiva. So here we are. And I'm wondering if you're remembering from our drawing, this was all for our outer mental disturbances or our inner mental disturbances. So already it's feeling like they're getting clearer, just as a painting is so transformative. And then these circles are going to be pretty clarity inducing. So we like to think about the 2 different colors, gold and silver. And one thing I wanted to point out while you're coloring, the significance of these 3 colors. So the white is purity. The gold, which is coming up, clarity, and then the silver is a neutral color. So neutral means it deflects confusion. Doesn't add to it, doesn't aggravate. You might say it de-escalates the situation. Silver de-escalates. So also it has this shimmering, nurturing quality of the moon woven into the colors. So we're going to do 1 color at a time, gold, and then I'll actually have 2 waters here. So I have 2 little containers of water. I'll have 1 container for my silver brush, 1 container for my gold brush, and I'll alternate gold, silver, gold, silver, gold. And I might go back and do it twice. Sometimes you have to do that with especially with the silver. And then I'm going to paint behind these 8. I'm going to paint with this blue, metallic blue color. You have your colors, you have your gold, you have your silver, and you have your new blue color to go behind this inner 8 petals. So let's see, I'm just going to start with the gold and show you how that's going to go. Just take a little bit here. You don't need your brush to be too thin. Width, paintbrush, pressure. I would say just don't put too much weight in the brush. That's really the key. And then slowly, we're going to go around. And I'll do it time-lapse now, so you can do it in your own time. Gold, silver, gold, silver, gold, gold, and then that blue color behind the petals. We have our first lot done, so that's pretty exciting. Let's have a look. Right now we have our gold, silver, gold, and we have that beautiful metallic blue behind the petals. And let's see, we might have to do one little pro tip I'll just give you while we're doing that. Sometimes I just drop a little water into a color that I want to use, just to get it ready to be mixed up again. It's almost like that water seeping in is a really good approach. So now I'm going to do a little erasing on these petals. I redrew these petals at one point to make room for that star. And so you can see a little bit of a indentation in my paper. Hopefully the white paint will fill that up a bit. Otherwise, it'll just be an interesting ornamentation. Just getting rid of the super dark lines. And now I'm ready for my white. So let's have a quick look at the white, see how it's doing. So I'll bring that back. I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush now. So now we're on to this next layer of 8. Every yantra really comes out differently. You know, I've made quite a few of these now, and they just have their own personality each time. And I just trust whether I end up keeping it or whether it's for someone, that that's exactly what they needed. This little ripple of double petalness that happened. So I'm going to go around like this, and then I'm going to go in. I'll show you the next thing I'll do. I'm going to go in with a small brush. This looks like a nice brush. And I'm going to do that pale silvery blue. I'll probably go around and do the centers once the white's really dry. But these are the colors you need now. White. And then this is the same color as this. All right, good luck with the second 8. So we're moving hopefully out of our mental confusion. And now we're coming to that feeling of being balanced, being in our bodies, feeling the layers in our body. So we don't just have the physical body, we have the layer of the chakras and the energy and the nadis, and then we have the physical body that's also imbued with breath, and we have the knowledge of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. It integrates what's happening in the yantra from this confusion to this process through the physical body where we digest and assimilate the shifts. And then the inner 8 is going to be this really refined sense of healing and perfection that is our true nature as we align with the elements of the cosmos. The elements and the directions, so the subtle elements and the directions. So the inner 8 petals align us with the 8 directions. And how do we place ourselves within the universe? We're going to have 3 gold rings again, like we had before. Gold, silver, gold, silver, gold. This time, behind the inner 8 petals, we're going to do silver. And then the petals themselves are going to be gold. So gold petals for that inner clarity that we're seeking. Away from the confusion into the clarity and into the healing and balance. So clarity and balance. Balancing the 5 elements with this star. So I will stop when I've done the gold petals, and we'll look at these seeds. And then I'll talk about how we're going to get to the center. So I'm going to start with the gold. And I'll do the gold, and then I'll do the silver, and then I'll do the gold again. And I do usually just set up 2 waters. 2 paintbrushes and 2 waters. Triambakam. It's a beautiful process making this yantra with this mantra, and it takes a while. And I think that is to encourage patience. You know, aside from a very mystical experience of healing, like a miracle, usually healing takes place over time because there's so many layers that this healing actually happens on. And sometimes you do have a shift in understanding, but it takes a moment to integrate that shift. And again, here this even thinner band, so I'm really not pressing hard. All right, I will be back together with you once we have done the gold petals. Until then, it's just alternating gold rings, silver behind the 8 petals. So silver back there, and then gold petals. Enjoy. So now as we head to the center, we're going to do the centers of the gold. They're going to be blue. So these are going to be blue. And then I'll do another gold band. Then behind the star, it's silver. The center is actually also silver. See how this is a pentagon, 5 sides, 5 points. And then the center is gold. So there's a little bit of alternating again, silver and gold. And when we get to the 5-pointed star, that central upward pointing triangle points to the triumph of spirit over matter. The elements, the 5 elements are balanced within and also your relationship to the cosmos. And then your spiritual growth is moving towards liberation. So remember at the beginning we talked about the liberation mantra, Triambakam, MahaMritunjaya. This liberation is this upward pointing energy that we have there. And let's see how we feel. So I'd like you to keep working. Blue now, then gold, silver, gold, silver, and then the gold bindu. And when we do the bindu, we'll do a little gold and then we'll wait a moment. We'll do a little more gold and wait a moment. And then eventually the whole hole will be filled and it'll be like a little gold dome. Because this bindu is where the essence of MahaMritunjaya, the Shiva, lives. So we don't want it to be a hole in a piece of paper. We want it to be really a nice space. So this is the beauty of working with gouache. You can actually create something 3-dimensional. So balancing. So this whole yantra is balancing the 5 elements, 3 bodies, removing the mental confusion, bringing about clarity, cultivating this sense of neutrality. Neutrality is a very advanced state. And your feathers don't ruffle as easily because you are in a space where you feel balanced. It's like if you feel really firmly on the ground, some wind comes along, you're not going to get knocked over. So in the same way, when we feel balanced, when we feel our own equilibrium, then we are unshakable. And we can really stay centered and move towards our spiritual goals, which also may mirror our earthly, worldly goals. So good luck on this journey. And I will see you probably for the next video. I'm taking requests. If you have any requests on what you would like me to show you next time, how to make videos, please let me know. So this is the blue. It's the same blue as we had here. The only difference is my paintbrush. Just a very light touch on these points. So these points that we're doing with the blue are echoing the direction lines, guiding us towards the center, receiving the grace of the 8 directions. And I probably repeat myself a lot as I'm teaching, because it's really some just basic principles that once you have them, then you'll really start to enjoy your yantra practice. Remember, it is a practice. So you can make the same yantra over and over, just like you can recite the MahaMritunjaya mantra daily. You can also keep on making this yantra. And then think of all the people you could gift it to and how they can all benefit from the vibrations of the MahaMritunjaya. So once you've finished, you can also sit and chant with it, gaze at it, allow it to really be sealed in your being. Once you make it, there's a whole intimate connection you're going to have that's different to just buying a yantra. Buying a yantra isn't bad, but making it is just really so nice. In fact, buying a yantra is really beautiful, just as is gifting a yantra. But I'm happy that you're tuning in and learning how to make it, because the practice itself has such a soothing effect. Steadying, healing. So now that I've done the blue, while we were chatting, I'll then go in and I'll do the gold ring next. So I'll do a gold ring next. Then I'll do silver, gold, silver. You'll see. When you get to the center, you have one last bindu drop of gold to put on. Take a nice breath. Load up your paintbrush. And let's say the mantra again together. Trambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanan udvargamiva bandhanan vritur mukshiyamamritahata. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.